So this past Sunday was, one of those times when I came home from church, having preached a sermon that was one I'd love to have back. And it hit me at some point. Like if I were a quarterback of a football team or a pitcher on a baseball team or a golfer or something, and there were a post-game press conference, people would be asking me like, so what happened out there, Anson? Like, but that doesn't happen in church. Like nobody's there. There is no, and I'm glad there's not. Not asking for that. but it hit me like, oh man, if there were a post-service press conference, there's some stuff going on that I would be forced to talk about. And it just got me kind of reflecting on my own craft and my approach to the calling that God's given me. Yeah, and how I need to grow.
Welcome to the For Lake Norman podcast. My name is Tucker, and I'm here with Anson, Hanbury. We are both pastors at Lake Norman Baptist Church, which is a church that exists to bring healing, connection, and purpose to people all around Lake Norman through the love of Jesus. And we do this podcast to extend even beyond our community to whoever watches and engages with these conversations. We hope what we talk about on here brings a little bit of each of those categories into your life, whether you have a need for healing, a need for connection, a need for purpose. We hope these types of conversations are stirring those things in the lives of people. And that's the mission and vision we believe God's called us to at our church. And this podcast is a way we carry that out. So normally what we would do each week, if you're new with us, is Anson preaches a sermon. It's usually Anson preaches a sermon on
sometimes
Sunday
Tucker,
mornings.
sometimes someone else.
Yeah, we have some other gifted teachers as well, but normally on a Sunday morning, they'll preach a sermon, and we'll unpack that a little bit here. But Anson and I were just talking before. I think we're going to take it a little bit of a different route today, which I'm actually excited about. So,
okay, I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest.
Yeah, well. Before we dive into it, I have a related fun way we can kick off the podcast. So this past weekend, my dad turned 60.
Okay.
And my mom had this genius idea for his 60th birthday. We've always talked about wanting to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And she was looking up, making a trip happen to do that for his birthday. And a just season game in Canton, Ohio, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is. Because Luke Kuechly was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Saw that.
And so we got to go do that this weekend. So
cool.
Knocked that off our bucket list. Got to see some football. And ran in, talked to Greg Olson at the Hall of Fame. He was just like going through the museum. That was cool.
Yeah.
So Christian leaders, influential people, who would be your first ballot Hall of Famer? The criteria is they can no longer be serving in any sort of ministry capacity.
Okay.
And they have to be, I guess that's really the only criteria. They could still be alive as long as they fit that criteria, but I feel like most of the people are going to be.
I mean, if you go big and go like all the way back.
Yeah, so that's the choice you have to make. But this is your personal, who would you put on your ballot to nominate them for a Hall of Fame induction?
All right, I'm going to go with 4 names.
Okay.
And probably afterwards I would go, I'm going to think of, others.
4 is ambitious. I was only asking for 1, but go for it.
Okay. Easier to name a few than to try to boil it down to 1. So I'll go in reverse order of when they lived.
Okay.
So more recent to more ancient. And the first is Tim Keller.
That's great.
So Tim Keller, I mean, he's the definition of a pastor, theologian, cultural thinker
Mm-hmm.
and writer, and he went deeper in the church and broader beyond the church,
Mm-hmm.
maybe than anybody in recent times, and in a way that was intellectually potent.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant guy, could have scientific conversations and philosophical conversations with people of all different walks of life, yet very gracious, ironic. He was just a guy who, was great in every way, and great preacher, great writer, great pastor. Tim Keller.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Graham.
He was going to be on my ballot for sure.
Yeah. Billy Graham was in a category by himself. Billy Graham, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate him. And a lot of those same Keller-like qualities, but very different personality, very different style, very different kind of calling. But he moved in and out of circles, both in and outside the church, in a way that everyone respected him. He doesn't occupy the place of a public intellectual per se, like a Keller does. He's an evangelist, right? That he's clearly sort of the definition of the gift of an evangelist in our time. But I'm reading between the lines. I think he was a really intellectually gifted man, and just gifted in a lot of different ways, and anointed by God. And Billy Graham. Jumping way back, George Whitefield.
It's a good one.
I'm seeing a theme even just as I'm talking about it. A lot of those same kinds of things I admire about Keller, I think George Whitefield represented in his time. George Whitefield, I read a biography of him years ago that really raised his stock in my estimation. And he was a unique blend of passion and emotion and heartfelt preaching and living. If you read his sermons, they're deep. And it was just a unique, powerful figure in history that God used. And then Martin Luther.
There you go. Yep.
Martin Luther was, all those things as well. But just courageous, really eccentric man. Wouldn't want to live his life. But courageous and bold, and he was the pioneer of the Reformation. Those are the four that came immediately to mind.
That's a good lineup. I think for me, Billy Graham would have made my list. Who was the first one you said again?
Tim Keller.
Yeah, he's a good one. I wasn't thinking about him initially, but I think he's a good one to have on there. I think I read a biography about Charles Spurgeon when I was in seminary, and I think I would have to put him on a ballot.
Yeah.
Not even primarily because of his preaching. To me, it was like the life that he and his wife lived outside of just the growing church that they were leading, that made me really have a lot of respect for him and the type of ministry that he had. Another one I'll throw in there is Jim Elliot, Elizabeth Elliot. Both of them together, I think, are pretty incredible, especially when you think about just the spreading of the gospel, almost like a Paul type of, missionary, just impact that they had. I really respected them a lot growing up. So those are ones that came to mind.
Yeah.
But I just
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame. Yeah. Because we were just talking before, in ministry circles or in church leadership, there is no,
there's no actual Hall of Fame.
There's no Hall of Fame, and because we don't function
and
like
you wouldn't want to,
sports franchise. You wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
But we were joking about how there's no post-game press conference. So you
Yeah.
get done preaching and there's no, you're the only one sitting with, I mean,
You're the only one breaking down your game.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I guess other people are breaking it down, but you're
they're
not
not
hearing
going to
it.
tell you about it. Yeah. Or ask you about
And
it.
I'm glad they're not. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they do sometimes. Maybe you hear it from some people, but
yeah, sometimes.
So, we were just joking about that. And it is interesting, though, because if you think about most careers and professions, that is the case. You don't get this, you're not forced to reflect on how things went or to review the game film, or it's not part of what you're expected to do like it is in sports.
Yeah, you don't come home from a day of work and, you have the media going, hey, how about that email you sent at 11:30 this morning? Like, how come you worded it that way? Yeah. And what do you think about the response that you got? You know, and then you had that team meeting at 2:00 this afternoon and you made this comment. Why'd you make that comment? And how come you were 4 minutes late? I mean, the media's not waiting around the corner to break down our day.
Yeah. And no one's chasing you down with a mic right after a service ends, being like, so,
Yeah.
In the second leg of your sermon,
that's right.
I noticed you said this. What was that all about?
Right. Yeah. So grateful that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Although I imagine, if you, if there's something that you did or didn't do that this. I mean, there's always something that I'm like, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said that, or I wish I would not have said this or that. And it might be kind of nice to say that to somebody, like get the word out publicly. Like, yeah, I saw the same thing you saw. I had to do over again. I wouldn't have done this or that. Or you could get in what you wish you would have said. So maybe there's a way that would be a positive, but overall, I'm not asking for it.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
So that's,
you'll be the media.
I'll be the media. Cause I'll let you share more about it. But,
sure.
But I do think the idea behind having those media sessions where you're giving a, immediate reaction to an athlete's performance, and it does force athletes to think about and digest, like, okay, what did I do out there?
Yeah.
How can I be better moving forward? And then also, if you're an athlete, you have built-in film session times, and the best athletes are the ones who watch a ton of film and they know what to expect and, how to improve. And they're constantly trying to improve their game. We were talking, the Tom Brady's, the Tiger Woods of the world, those types of athletes had coaches for their entire career to help them improve, get better, tweak certain things of their game. And I think always having that growth mindset of how we can improve is something we should take into all of our careers and all of our jobs, whether there's a press conference we have to face or not.
Right.
I think that's important. So I'll let you kind of speak a little bit more into just your kind of thought process this week and how all of that popped into your head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some ways, it actually is connected to the sermon series that we launched on Sunday, A Time to Build, because we're in a season, we're going to be building physically onto our campus here in a couple of months. Super excited about that. And so I'm preaching a series to prepare our church for that and to sort of set some of the timelines, say, hey, here's what to expect. And to make the point that it's not just about building onto our physical campus, but we also need to be building into our own life as a church. And so I've been reflecting on that myself and my role in the church. Like, how do I need to grow? How do I need to be built up for the sake of the mission and vision that God has given us to bring healing, connection, and purpose to people all around Lake Norman through the love of Jesus? And my role as a preacher, my role as a leader, my role as a pastor and shepherd, I want to go first in that and not call on the church to do something that I'm not doing. And sometimes it's an interesting thing about preaching. I think the Holy Spirit works in a lot of different ways, but very often what he puts on my heart and mind, sometimes months or even a year ahead of time to put on the calendar, when I get to that series and start digging into the book of the Bible or whatever the thing is, it's so needed personally for me. And it's like, wow, Holy Spirit, I think you knew what you were doing. I thought, I'm asking the question, what does our church need and what does our community need? And he's also answering the question, what does Anson need?
Yeah.
And that's a great gift. And I could tell story after story of how much I've grown through being able to study and reflect on whatever it is that I'm preaching on, and whatever series that we're in, whatever book of the Bible that we're in, right? So I'm wanting to come into this season asking afresh, okay, how do I need to grow? And really, that's kind of the culmination of a longer season of just my own preparation for preaching, my own approach to preaching, and I feel like I had a rhythm that kind of worked for me for a good number of years. And little over a year ago, looking back, I couldn't perceive it at the time, but as I'm looking back and feeling like, what's happening here that makes it harder for me week in and week out? And specifically, like, anybody who's a part of our church who's paying attention has sort of, you could say, I've been preaching longer sermons for the last maybe 15 months. And at first I would get teased about it, by people who, well-meaning, good people, friends who are like, dang, that one was long. And then it was like, yeah, they're all anyway. So I've been reflecting. Okay, why? So I've been tweaking the way that I've been approaching the sermons, and like, okay, I'm shortening my notes. I'm approaching it a little bit differently. A couple years ago, I shifted my day off from Friday to Monday, and just did some different things to try and, I guess, improve my own ability to prepare and be ready for, one of the primary callings that's part of my job. And so I've been tweaking this for a while, but not making progress. Like, it seems like no matter what I do, I was just, we were chatting about this before the podcast. I don't know if it's a great analogy or not, but I preached a sermon series. People around Lake Norman Baptist would remember the top 10 Bible stories. And so a lot of them were really long stories. So like
entire books of the Bible.
Entire books, trying to boil it down to one sermon or several chapters or whatever. And so that summer, my average preaching time went from like 38 to 40 minutes to like 45 to 50 minutes, and like with gusts above that, which is just long. And I think for that series, like, okay, I at least justified it myself. Like, wow, okay, I'm trying to do a lot here. And when we're done, we're going to get back to the other thing. But it's like, sometimes if you stretch out a sock and it just gets longer and it doesn't like have the elasticity to get back to its normal shape, I think it like stretched out my mental space or something that like now it seems like no matter what I do, it fills up that same amount of space. And so I got this stretchy sock or stretched out sock that is not going back to shape. And anyway, so it culminated in a little mini press conference that I had yesterday. And so while we don't have press conferences in our world, right? Yeah, I try to kind of conduct my own on Sunday afternoons at home, with the family. I'm like, all right, what do you guys remember about the sermon? What did you think? And I usually don't get, sometimes I'll be encouraged by the response, but I don't usually get a lot, right? But yesterday was unique. There was a unanimous refrain that sort of came up from everybody in the Hanbury house that was like, yeah, Dad, I couldn't really follow that. I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, maybe it was me, but I wasn't really tracking. And so my wife, God bless her, gracious. Yes, so we were having a good conversation about like, okay, what happened there? And upon reflection, right? So I tried to do basically an overview of all of the history of Israel from Genesis up to Ezra and Nehemiah, which is where the sermon series is. I tried to do an overview of the major themes of the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. And then I also tried to do kind of a little bit deeper exposition into the first part of the story of Nehemiah. And then also share some vision about what's coming in our church. And, I didn't see it ahead of time. Like, that sounds like a lot to try to squeeze in. And there's probably a reason my wife was like, yeah, it was like Sauron and Saruman and Bilbo and Frodo and all, and like she's like, the names are coming and going, and it's Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah and everything, and I was like, yeah. So the post-game press conference on this past Sunday was like, okay, kind of a culmination of, some things that have been stirring in me and questions that I've been asking. And what hit me was exactly what you just mentioned. Like, yeah, like people who do a thing, like a golfer, pitcher, a quarterback, you go through these slumps, you go through these seasons where, my golf swing was working, for a while, and then something happened and something's off, and I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna need to rebuild that swing. And so in some way, it's kind of the season where I feel like, okay, I've known it, I've tried to do some things to improve my own approach and such over the last year or so, but I'm in a season, kind of along with our church, where it's a time to build, and kind of like Ezra and Nehemiah, it's a time of rebuilding, and I'm not sure exactly what that's going to mean for me. But getting back to some of the basics in my own craft, in my own calling, in order to be as effective and impactful as possible for the sake of our church, for the sake of our community, our mission, our vision, and for my own sustainability, to kind of figure out some things. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And that was the fruit of the post-game press conference, on Sunday.
Yeah. And I think, for most people, no matter what job you're in, it's helpful to take these times of reflection on, like, are the primary tasks of what I do still effective? Are they still, am I heading down the right path? Or, maybe some people have identified an area they need to grow in, but they're on a journey similar to you, where it didn't get fixed overnight. It's like developing over the course of a whole year, plus some time. And, whether that can apply whether you're in sales, people get in sales slumps, people, leadership in general, in any capacity, in any business, has its challenges. And, if you're not growing as a leader, then things get stagnant. And no matter what industry people work in, things are always going to be rapidly changing, and you got to know how to adapt and kind of build. How to build and rebuild constantly. And
we're changing as well.
Yeah.
Our life situations are changing. The pressures and expectations that we have to maintain outside of our work are a shifting thing also. So things change both externally and internally.
Yeah. So I think, you bring this up is spot on, and maybe we can just model maybe what it would look like to process that with a trusted person, to maybe help other people who are going through a time to maybe rebuild in their own careers or their own personal lives. Even as a parent, I mean, I'm not a parent, but you are. I'm sure there's times where you and Dina get together and you're like, we got to do something different.
You have no idea, Tucker, because for all the reasons you just said, the culture changes. The kids are parenting a toddler is different than parenting an elementary school age kid is different than parenting a middle schooler, different than parenting a teenager, different than parenting a young adult.
Yeah.
That's as far as I know. And then, I have to talk to others about parenting older adult kids. The demands, the approach, the skill set, the temperament, the natural wiring of a parent. Like, I think some of us are more wired to be parents of small kids. We find it easier. Others of us are more naturally, we have an affinity for parenting older kids. I think that's a lane we could go down, and I don't think we should, but that's a lane we could go down for sure.
Yeah. I'm just trying to give some legs to all the different ways in which we need to go through a similar process to what you're describing. I think even in our spiritual lives, there comes times where you've done these certain sets of rhythms, habits, practices for who knows how many years. And then you hit this like plateau moment, or you hit a wall and you're like, man, I don't feel as close to God as I usually do, or something feels off. And I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if we don't change anything, it's probably going to continue down that path. And I mean, I've experienced that multiple times where I've had to change up the rhythm or the structure of kind of how I've built my spiritual life.
Yeah.
In order to bring new and fresh energy and life into my life with God.
Yeah.
And I don't think, we have to go through this process. Pretty much what I'm getting at is in almost every area of our life, there's going to come a time where we hit these seasons where just something's off, and you kind of have to reinvent yourself a little bit. And I remember, so most people know I'm a huge fan of the show Ted Lasso, which I'll give the caveat on the front end. It is not a Christian show. So there's things in it that, viewer discretion advised, but there's a lot of good like leadership lessons and things like that in it. And there's one episode where one of the players gets the yips, which in the sports world is kind of what you were describing, where like the swing's off, or they're just not dialed in. Something, there's some mental block,
throwing a bunch of interceptions, fumbling the ball,
throwing their game off. And the coach is kind of in his own wrestling, like he's got issues with anxiety and is having these panic attacks and stuff, and he's working through it with, they bring a sports psychologist in to kind of help the team, and he's working through a lot of stuff personally. But one of the things he does towards the end of the episode is he has all the players bring in, like, I can't remember if it was like an item that either meant a lot to them or an item that like represented something they were scared of or fearful about, and they brought it and like burned it in a trash can like on the field or whatever, and they're like, this is how you break the curse of the yips. And one of the coaches is looking at Ted the whole time like, this is just a whole facade, isn't it? And he was like, yeah, it's just helping them get over the mental block that's in their head that is really what's behind, burning these things isn't actually going to accomplish anything, but the ritual is helping purge whatever mental block is keeping the players from performing how they need to. So I'm curious for you, do you feel like there's some sort of mental block that has you in this rhythm of kind of just what you described, of like consistently preaching longer than normal? Like, is there something in your own mind, I guess, that you've been wrestling with since you've noticed that this has started?
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the things we've been reading about a lot in our family is ADHD, about different family members, and so Dean and I have been talking about that, and there may be something there. There may be some kind of a diagnosable ADHD mental thing that I struggle with. I don't know, maybe. I think maybe there are just some ruts of the schedule that I've fallen into in terms of my weekly rhythms. Like I said, I've been taking Mondays off for the last couple of years, hit the ground running Tuesday morning, but Tuesdays and Wednesdays are kind of a mix of meetings and, organizational stuff and all of that. And then I take Thursdays and Fridays, and, I'm not in the office Thursday, Fridays because I'm in a study and writing, mode on Thursdays and Fridays. I think for a good while that worked, and it's hard maybe to diagnose why it's not working, except I have just thinking about recently, like, okay, starting my work week back up on a Tuesday. Dean and I were talking about this yesterday. I was like, it does feel like I'm behind the 8 ball from the get-go. And as if I start to play back, my sense of like pressure really starting about Monday night. I go to bed feeling behind. And so the goal for any preacher and is to be ahead, right? You're not starting a sermon the week up. You shouldn't be, right? So you want to be at least a week or two out. And so for me, this last year or so, I'll get ahead for a little bit and then I'll fall back, and I'll get ahead for a little bit and I'll fall back. And just I think there's a connection there with like, okay, starting each week, feeling like I'm a day behind, and then pressing, further, closer to Sunday for, so like, just to be totally transparent. So like typically most, I'll go into the weekend, 80 or 90% done with a sermon. Whether I did most of the heavy lifting that week or the week before, I've just sort of gotten used to the final 10, 15% kind of coming together, and on Friday, Saturday. I think for a long time, that's just what it was. And I kind of learned to trust it. Yeah, there's a certain level of preparation that I felt like was sufficient for me. And with all the other, leadership responsibilities and other conversations and decisions and all the things that needed to take place during the week, if I could go into the weekend, 80, 90% done with that Sunday's sermon, then I'm confident that, come Saturday evening when I pull it out. So, what I do is I send my notes on Friday to our tech team. They build a draft of the slides for Sunday and then email them back to me, and I'll open them up Saturday evening. So kind of Saturday night, there's a routine for me of once we do whatever we're going to do on Saturday, everybody knows Dad's going to, be working Saturday evening. And so what I do is I'll open up that draft of the slides and I'll reopen my notes that are, again, 85, 90% done. And what's left is kind of the finishing touches of organizing my thoughts. And sometimes I will have had a thought, during the day, like, okay, I'm going to move that point because I'm just playing it in my head, and I'll move some things around, or a phrase will come to mind, like, ooh, I like that phrase better than kind of the phrase that I used, earlier in the week or whatnot. And so I'll spend a few hours on Saturday evening, just turning it into a finished, prepared sermon, and then feel good about it going to bed, wake up Sunday morning, get up early, come into the office early, pray about it, read through it, preach it. And more or less, I think that worked for me for a number of years. Until it didn't.
Yeah.
Until, it's like, okay, that's, and whether I've changed, whether, I don't know. I mean, these are things I'm going to be thinking about. Like, I'm not sure what all has changed, except, I don't like the fruit of it. And it's more than just the one. It wasn't just the one Sunday. It was kind of, it takes, everybody hits a tipping point, right?
Yeah.
And I mentioned, like, for the last year, I've been trying to kick this around, and I'll come into Sundays, and you and I have had some conversations too. I'm like, oh man, feel like I was better at this years ago than I am now, which everybody wants their trajectory to always be up and to the right. That's right. But that's not reality. It actually helped me to have this realization of, okay, the idea of a slump or the yips or whatever, like, and I don't want to over dramatize it, but I mean, it's like, okay, I need to build in something different for me, for the sake of our church, for the sake of our community, for the sake of our mission. And I think now's the time to do it. So I'm going back to my week. All right, let's rebuild the schedule. let's get some coaching, and somebody else to kind of come alongside and from an outside of our orbit, to give some objective input, and So, and that's something that I am calling our church to a season of building. And of openness to new things and new ways for the sake of the mission and vision of the church. And I hope I'm able to lead by example.
Yeah. I think I applaud you for kind of recognizing what the Lord's inviting you to, as you're also inviting the congregation into that season, because I do think that I think we as a congregation, I'm including myself with everybody, I think we will benefit most from who you become going through this journey
Mm-hmm.
of this building season personally. And I think that's true for all of our leadership team. Like,
Yeah.
what the Lord does in our lives personally and the ways that he grows us and stretches us, I think is going to do more for the future of this church than the physical building that will be taking place,
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
any of that stuff. So I'm thankful that you're thinking through these things and recognizing it. And I think for anybody who's listening, you know, what you're describing as a key part of your job is not a normal
Yeah.
part of most people's jobs. But I do think there's, what you're describing is you're recognizing you've had a schedule and a rhythm built in for a while that no longer is producing the fruit that it used to produce. That seems pretty transferable to a
Right.
lot of things in
I
life.
think so. Yeah.
Because even me personally, in my own role, like, I'm realizing some of the rhythms and habits I was in this summer was I've maybe gotten to
Mm-hmm.
a rhythm, and it's just not producing the fruit that I hope it produces. And what can I do about that? How can I really think about this, rebuild? Um, yeah, and I think it's just doing what you've kind of done here, just
Mm-hmm.
asking questions and thinking about it. And I'm sure you'll discover more along the way as well.
Yeah. And hearing you reflect that back, I appreciate that. And it makes me think, for any of us in whatever that season is, it's an invitation to growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of the kindnesses of God.
Mm-hmm.
He brings us to these places. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for us, we feel like we, at least for me, I'll speak for me. I go, how did I get myself into this rut?
Yep.
Or whatever. Like, I'm very self-referential,
Mm-hmm.
like, put it on myself. Or sometimes we blame ourselves, right? If
Mm-hmm.
things are not going the way that they used to go, again, back to the sports analogy, I mean, people get we get very hard on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and just we get frustrated with ourselves. Sometimes we're more frustrated with ourselves than we would get with anybody else. Like, why can't I do what I need to be able to do and what I used to be able to do? Like, I don't care what the task is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just our human nature, is to get frustrated with ourselves. But I think there's a spiritual reality
Mm-hmm.
that God even works through those things. I think God brings us to points in our lives that reveal how we need to grow for our own benefit and for the benefit of those around us, and to recognize these moments. It doesn't have to be in church work. It could be in any work, how God works in all of it,
Mm-hmm.
and God cares enough about us to put us through these fires,
Mm-hmm.
and bring us to these points where it's like, okay, time to
Mm-hmm.
level up.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the next thing. And most of us, myself, at least I'll again speak for me, I don't usually think to thank God for that right out of the gate. It's usually upon much later reflection, like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe maybe that was a gift that God gave me, of opening my eyes to see something that was for my own good.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a spot like that and you're super frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
you may not want to hear it right now, but like, consider how that might be an opportunity from God,
Mm-hmm.
that he's bringing us into.
Yeah, I think that's a key part of the spiritual journey, is God brings you to these places where you just run face first into a wall, and you're like, I don't know where
Yeah.
to go from here. Feels like things are flat or something's off. And in the moment, it's
Yeah.
hard to feel gratitude for the fact that you
Yeah.
just ran into a wall because your face hurts and you're bloody. But
Yeah.
I think the reflection, taking time to reflect and look back, you can see, oh, if I would not have been brought to that place, I would never be where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And I can do that multiple times in my life,
Yeah.
thinking like, okay, well, I got to this place that helped me grow in this way, and this place helped me grow in that way. And I think the more you take the time to reflect and look back on all the times God's done that, it helps you more quickly
Yeah.
recognize them in the present as you're walking through
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
And yeah, each of them is an opportunity for growth. And what we know is God is on a mission to, through his Holy Spirit, change and transform us to be more like his son, Jesus. And a lot of times that can happen through seasons of just being frustrated and being like, I just can't,
Yeah.
crack the code on this. But the wrestling with it and not being able to crack the code, he's forming and shaping you through all
Yeah.
of that. So yeah, I think it's a regular process. It's just none of us have a consistent post-game press conference where we're faced with,
So thank you
what
for
we need to grow in.
Thank you for the opportunity to have a little post-game press
Yeah.
conference here, and hopefully it's beneficial and at least somewhat interesting for someone else. But I do think back to where we're at as a church, it's a time to build, and it's landing with me. I mean, even in this last in the last hour, like, oh yeah, it's a time to build for me.
Mm-hmm. It's time to build for all of us.
Yeah.
And I think you said that well in the sermon. Like, having a new space is great and all.
Yeah.
But if God doesn't do a work in us,
yeah,
then we might waste the new space we have.
Yeah. If we're still the same old us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I think it's your vulnerability and letting us behind the scenes and, looking underneath the hood of your preaching journey, I think is an invitation for all of us into adopting that same growth mindset.
Yeah.
And, what areas of our lives do we need to make a focus area, in the next course of whatever period of time you want to define. But I think that can be really beneficial. So thank you for being willing to open up about that.
Thanks for listening.
Super helpful. Well, we hope you all enjoyed this conversation. We hope, if you want me or Anson to do a post-game press conference for you and your job, maybe we can line that up. But we hope this encourages you to just take an inventory of what's the area of growth you may want to take a step in over the next season. And if you need a community to walk with you through that, like you mentioned, getting some coaching and getting some other people to speak into it, we would invite you to come be a part of our church, because that's a reason the church exists, is to spur one another on towards growth into the image of God. So our website's always in the description. If you're looking for that, we would love to connect with you, and we will see you next week. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. If you're enjoying these conversations each week, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube, or the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts. It's quick, it's free, it's easy, and it makes a huge difference in helping our podcast reach more people in the Lake Norman community. Thank you for supporting the For Lake Norman podcast, and we hope you have a great week.